Tracie Harris is one of the hosts of the Atheist Experience, a television show that's based in Austin, but essentially is seen all around the world via the internet. She is, as I understand it, the one who feeds Matt Dillahunty all his best lines, tells him what to say, chastises him for, being boring. And she's been kind enough to join me for a podcast. Hey, Tracie, how you doing? I see you shaking your head, which is why I just jumped in. How you doing, Tracie?
I'm doing good. Thanks.
You are always complimented by Matt. Matt's always like, oh, Tracie's so smart. Oh, Tracie had a great line. Tracie did this. Tracie did that. And I'm like, I'd just put that shit on a resume. I mean, everywhere I went. Yeah. Actually, is it like herding cats over there? I mean, all of these free thinkers all converging in one spot or what?
Fortunately, I'm not the person tasked with controlling anybody else. So they do what they like, I assume. And yeah, I have no authority over any of them, so I don't have to worry about it.
Austin is kind of this weird microcosm inside Texas. I mean, you guys are down there in the land of Governor Perry and all kind of religious legislation regarding public school, public education, and whatnot. And then you go to Austin, and it's just kind of a different animal. What's the story?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of inputs in Austin. So it's the capital city, and I know that they, pushed a lot, like about 2 decades ago, for sort of beefing up their tech company input. So it used to be known as the New Silicon Valley, and so we gained a lot of influx from California and some other states. A lot of people working for tech who are not, I don't think, hugely like a conservative demographic. So that brought in a lot of different people. There's tons of tech companies here. And there's also the huge University of Texas at Austin, which has 50,000 plus students. So you have this huge college population that really adds to that. So I think we have just a lot of different input from a lot of areas outside of Texas that maybe a lot of other Texas cities don't have access to.
Tracie, there are people right now who are going to kill me if I don't ask you why there's a big cardboard box that says eggs on it.
Oh, there's a lot of boxes.
What are you doing back there? Are you moving out? Are you a hoarder? What's happening?
No, actually, no. I have a roommate. So a friend of mine graduated, speaking of UT, from UT, and she needed a place to crash for a while until she could find her dream job after graduating. So she got her PhD in anthropology, and she just needed somewhere to stay while she sends out her resumes and looks for her job. So this is all her stuff. And
she has no idea that her personal effects are being broadcast.
Well, her box, I have boxes, right? So no, but she's got another room full of stuff too, and so it's luckily I have tons of space that I don't use, so she's welcome to store things there. I'm surprised.
Ever generous Tracie Harris opens her home.
Did you see the Hot Wheels? You got to see the Hot Wheels too.
What are they on the wall?
They're on the wall, yeah.
I have a tiny screen, so forgive me. Those on YouTube may be able to focus better. Is it your collection or hers?
No, that's my ex-husband's Hot Wheels.
You just keep them around.
They're here. Well, I'm keeping him around too, so he's here as well, and we all just sort of share the space for now.
What's your interest outside of being, a heathen on internet and on Austin-based television? What do you do for kicks?
Oh gosh, I spend a lot of time.
You have a life, right? I mean, that's my overall point.
I spend a lot of time on social media.
Most people who see activists only see them in the context of their activism, and they catch a little bit of their personal lives on Facebook or Twitter. But I mean,
I think that people. I remember one time posting on this one site, and I said, I'm a very boring person. And people were writing, and they were just like, well, maybe we can get your life, more exciting. And I'm like, well, no, I didn't say I didn't like being boring. I didn't say I was bored. I said I'm boring. And my life, I like my life very low key and low chaos, and I have a super low tolerance for most things that are just sort of upheaval. So
the white noise of everyday life, right?
I just I love staying at my house. I love my house. I like my garden. I like to just hang out at home. I like to cook. I'm super, other than cleaning, I'm super domestic. Like I like to go shopping. Like I'm a bargain shopper. You know, I do the thrift store thing and stuff like that. And I don't. I mean, I'm significantly like spending a lot of time on social media. A lot of, you know, just sort of for fun because it relaxes me to just hang out with friends online. Weirdly, I have a lot of friends, but I don't see them often. So I will tend to maybe host parties at the house a couple times a year, and they're super well attended, but during the spaces between them, I rarely see anyone. Like I'm very, very on my own, and it's not that I don't like people or that I don't like seeing people, it's kind of more that I just don't think about it. Like I don't think about reaching out for social contact in person.
You must enjoy debate. You can't be on the Atheist Experience without thriving.
No.
Or seeking out
some
don't like
kind
of... No, come on.
Don't like it. No,
You're
don't
right
like
there
it.
in the crosshairs. You got theists from all manner of backgrounds and perspectives coming at you, and you're right there.
I think you got to think it's kind of like somebody, I guess, becoming, going into the military and assuming that they necessarily like war. It's like that's not necessarily why they did it. They might do it because they feel like someone needs to do it, and they feel like they might be obligated, or that this is a requirement to protect themselves or other people, you know, and so they feel like a standing military is an important part of a free society. So to assume that somebody really enjoys war because they sign up for the military would be a huge mistake. And I think that in my situation, the idea that I enjoy those kinds of discussions is a giant, giant error that people make about me a lot. Like they think I want to engage in this stuff, and I really, really don't like it. But I feel like it needs to be done. And I'm not personally convinced that I do it better than most people, but people tell me that I do. And so I feel like if as long as people feel like I am a good person to engage in those debates in the public dialogue, then I should continue to do it. You know, when the day comes where people are just like, you're doing more harm than good when you get up and open your mouth, that's when I'll probably stop. But my goal in doing what I do would be that one day it's not necessary to do it, right? I would love to wake up one morning and religion is not dominating everything and threatening people and harming people, and so I can just say, cool, we never have to shoot another episode of the show, it's done. But I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime.
How long have you been doing the show, Tracie?
I can never remember if it was, I think it's 2009 maybe was when I started.
And why, how did it come about that you became a part of it? Were you a caller at some point?
Oh yeah, I used to call the show. I love public, I've told the story a lot, so I'll just run through it real quickly, but public access here in Austin is really funny. We have a lot of really hysterical shows that they air on public access. I don't have cable anymore, so I don't get to see it, but back in the day when I lived in an apartment and I had cable, I used to watch Access, and just it would crack me up. Like the things that people would rent airtime to put on the air was just ridiculous. I mean, some of it was really cool, and some of it was informative, and some of it was just funny. Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist who gets a lot of airplay, was actually on. That's where I first saw him. And
they
then
ran Alex Jones on public television?
Oh, there was like about a year or two where most of it was Alex Jones, where he was just buying up all the airtime. And so you paid to be on the TV, and you could show pretty much, whatever you wanted to show. And so he was buying a lot of airtime and showing a lot of his videos and a lot of his caller things. And, and I actually called and talked to him a few times. I doubt he would remember because he talks to so many people, but, it was a very weird experience, very surreal. But I saw the Atheist Experience, and when I saw them, I used to call a lot because I was a conservative Christian. That was my background. I wasn't a conservative Christian when I called the show. I had that background of being a conservative Christian, and that motivated me to call. Usually I would want to call when other callers would call in, and they would say something that I was just like, wow, that's really messed up, or, oh, I remember when I used to think that, and here's what changed my mind, or, so it'd be all these prompts when I would hear the call. I would never sit down and plan to call the show, but then I'd hear these other callers, and I'd be like, someone needs to respond to that who has a background in, heavy religion. And so I would call up, and it was real easy to get through to the show back then because, it was just local Austin and nobody really called. I mean, they'd chat for a long time and never get a call. So I would call up and I would try to quickly get through my stuff so that Other people could call in if they wanted to. And after a while, I got invited to go to the dinner, and I went to the dinner, and I brought some. I used to do this comic strip called Atheist Eve, and I brought some samples of it, and people enjoyed it. And so the atheist community of Austin offered to host the comic strip at their website, and I told them that would be great. So I went ahead and started doing it, and I did Atheist Eve for a while, and that was a fun thing that a lot of people enjoyed. And then they told me that I should join the association, and I did. After a while, I was like, I'm not big on joining things, but at the same time, I'm going to a lot of their events, and I'm really getting all the perks of being a member, so I should probably just, hand them my $30 and just do it, So I did. And I didn't realize it, but that was one of the prerequisites to being a host on the show. So after I joined, then I was like, hey, would you like to do the show? And I was like, yeah, no, that's not really something I think I'd like. But I was asked a few times, and I finally agreed to try it with Don Baker, and I tried with Don, and it was not a bad experience, but they put me on the rotation, and they notified me that I was put on the rotation.
Now, before the first show, right before they roll, is your heart about to pop out of your chest? Were you sweaty palms?
Well, no,
nervous?
See, that was
Were you
the
free?
cool thing. Don actually had a guest on, and so he told me, why don't you sit in? And that way, if you don't feel like you want to engage, you don't have to, but you could if you want to. And she was actually a lot of fun to talk to. She had a conservative religious background as well, more so than me. And so she was a lot of fun to chat with, and she was very good, I thought. And then it wasn't as bad. I guess my biggest concern, I think, was that I would lock up on the air, that somebody would call and be talking to me, and that there would be a good answer or many good answers, and that I would just simply freeze and not be able to think of what to say, that I would just, end up not being able to converse and not have a response, and I would be completely useless. And it turns out that I'm pretty good at being chatty, so it worked.
People love you, Tracie. It's just...
Well, thank you. Not everybody loves me, but...
there are probably a few theists out there.
The people who love me. So.
Now, you mentioned a couple of things I want to come back to. You are a graphic artist, and you draw...
I was. I don't do that. I haven't done that in about 10 years. And I'm sorry, because that is posted still. It's just that the website's not been updated.
Well, you mentioned that you had drawn, was it a graphic, an illustration, a comic, an atheist thing? What was it?
Well, if you ever see it, I mean, I wouldn't call that drawn. It's like barely.
Well, I want to see it. Is there a copy of it somewhere? I mean,
it's at the website. It's at the Atheist Community of Austin website. It's one of the links from their main page.
All right, I'm going to go find it, and I'll put a super up for everybody who's watching so we can see
there's
your
a persecution. Should I send you a link?
Send me a graphic. For those who are watching in post, it's already on screen. So
there's actually one that gets the most airplay.
Did you do a whole run of these, or just a few, or what?
I did one a month for a few years. So yeah, there's like a little slew of them.
Where did this sort of desire to do battle come from? I mean, were you?
Oh.
Did religion jack you up, or what?
Yes.
You kept talking about this fundamentalist kind of conservative religious background where you...
Yeah, I feel like religion steals all your time, your resource. I mean, it just steals your life. When I think of the things that I put my mind and my energy toward when I was involved in religion, it is just aggravating to me that somebody put into my head that this was important, that this was something that I should be focusing on and thinking about, and that this is where I should put my energy. And all these things are happening in reality, right? Like all over the planet, there's all these things that need to be fixed. And I'm sitting here focusing on what was just some of the most ridiculous issues that religion thinks is important.
Well, give me some examples. What were they focusing you on?
Well, they weren't super social. So when you've got today, like when we think of conservative Christianity in the United States today, we think of the evangelical movement that is very, very proactive in forcing itself onto other people via legislation, right? So everybody is familiar with that. But I come from a background where the religion was super, super like very withdrawn. They were socially withdrawn, and they were not active politically. So they had this issue of like arguing about biblical crap. So you would be putting all your energy into trying to determine whether or not God thought it was a good idea for men and women to swim together, or whether it was acceptable for a woman to wear pants, you know, to church, or, I mean, just that kind of stupidity where you just thought my eternal soul rests on whether or not I can figure out the right answer to this idiotic question. But this is where your energy goes. And then at the end of the day, I remember an elderly woman who was probably one of the sweetest people I've ever known, who was involved in the church. She was very soft-spoken, and never said an unkind word about anybody. She ended up with cancer, and she was dying, and I went to visit her at her house. She was not doing well, and the treatments weren't going well, and she was enduring radiation, and her body was just racked. And she pulls me aside while her husband is talking to my parents, and she's telling me that she's afraid that there's something she might have been doing wrong in her life that she didn't know about that is going to send her to hell, that Jesus is not going to accept her because she's imperfect and because she didn't know that there was this problem. And there's this idea that, oh, you know, Jesus forgives you and then you're acceptable. But with religions like this, you have to continually identify the sins that you commit and ask for that forgiveness in order to receive it. And so for her, the idea that she was saved was irrelevant because she was thinking if I was committing some sort of sin and I wasn't aware and didn't ask forgiveness, then I'm tainted and I'm not acceptable to God, and I'm going to die and I'm going to suffer eternity in hell. And this was what she was dealing with instead of focusing on her chemo and her treatments and her, you know, getting better or even dealing with settling her affairs in order. If she didn't get better, she's sitting here worrying about going to hell as she's dying because that's what the church had done to her. And that to me makes me sick. Like, I just get so angry when I see a thing like that, and I feel like someone needs to stand up and try to get a person like this out of it so that they don't end up in that situation when they're 70 or 80 years old. That is sick.
Were you in some ways that person? Was it... you know, do you find yourself whispering the prayer of forgiveness? Lord, forgive me for this thought. Forgive me for doing this. Forgive me for wearing this.
Oh yeah, that's the catch-all. Forgive me. There's, you know, there's even a hymn we used to sing that was like, it had a line that said something like, "Forgive the secret sins I do not see." And it's like, forgive me for the things I'm unaware that I'm doing wrong. It's like you just want to throw out this blanket of, you know, please don't, you know, and then it doesn't, people are like, oh, it gives you comfort when you're dying. It doesn't give you comfort when you're dying. It terrifies people that are dying. They are horrified that they may not be good enough to go to heaven.
It's interesting to watch people who believe in heaven. Quite often, the percentage of people who believe in an afterlife are the ones most terrified of death. It's bizarre.
Well, yeah, if I believed that there was a, you know, hey, there's this 50-50 shot, you know, of you may or may not go to hell. I mean, I much rather like the idea of, you know, dying and that's just the end of my life. Like, you had this life, you had this time, you know, when you're on the planet. I can't complain. When I think about the way some people's lives are on this planet, I'm doing pretty well and I'm pretty comfortable. And I have really nothing to complain about. I mean, my daily stresses are nothing compared to what some people have to endure. And so when I think about the idea that I was, you know, I was born into an existence where I have the opportunity to spend, like, you know, maybe 70 years if I'm lucky, running around doing whatever I want to do in a very comfortable way, and then I die and that's the end of it, that's a pretty nice party. Like, I'm okay with that, totally. And if somebody told me, oh, you can have an eternity like afterwards of life, but, you know, it may be enduring eternal torture, I'd be like, yeah, no, I think I'll just go with the nothing.
Hey, Tracie, have you heard the argument that eternity actually cheapens the value of life? Like, if it never ends, then it sort of becomes, I don't know, it cheapens the fact that it's so precious.
I think it would if people really believed it, but I'm not convinced that people internally actually believe what they talk about there. I mean, some people probably do, don't get me wrong. I don't speak for, you know, everybody in that situation. Like, clearly the woman who was scared on her deathbed that I was talking about, you know, that woman believed it. But there are so many people who seem to, like, they talk a game, you know what I mean? They talk this good game about it, but then you'll see a loved one die and they are devastated. And it's like, well, if you believe what you say you believe, why are you devastated by a death?
I think that some of them are, I think many of these people are trying to talk themselves into it. The more I say it, the more I repeat it, the more I reinforce it, the more maybe I'll be able to buy it. You know?
Yeah, I can't, like I say, I can't get into people's heads, but all I can say is that there are some people that I watch and I think they believe it and they are not happy. And there are other people who seem to say they believe it, but when you see their reaction to death, it's pretty not comforted.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's like, I think, and what's interesting is I'm going to say I can't remember anyone ever saying, my child died, but I take comfort in the fact that, you know, my baby is in heaven with God. But I've heard many other people that aren't in that situation say people get comfort from their religion in those situations. It seems like the people who aren't in those situations assert that people are comforted by them, but I've never seen the grieving parent look like they were somehow, you know, okay with it that their child had died because God. I have never seen that. I've only ever seen grief-stricken religious parents.
I was having lunch with, he's a theologian. And, you know, he's a tremendous man, but I always kind of get that condescending look of, you poor, poor man. One day I hope you come to know the love of Jesus. You know that look, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about heaven, and he was perfectly fine with the idea of a heaven, an eternal heaven, where all you do is, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty who was and is to come. I mean, just kissing God's ass forever was his idea of a great, great time. Forever. And I just stopped. I'm like, is this really paradise? Because I'm thinking, you know, God, could you send me to hell? You know, I mean, do I get a shot?
And you have to think, like, I really have to think to myself, there are people that write to us, and it's funny because the first time I heard it, I was like, this is really weird. But then we started to hear it more and more. It's just, I guess I hadn't encountered anybody like this. But there are some people who do not believe in God that are atheists, and they understand it's completely ridiculous, and yet they fear hell. So they somehow retain that fear of hell, even though it doesn't make sense. And for me, I think what happened when it came to walking away from the church, a big part of this, you know, my deconversion from the particular religion that I was in, specifically Christianity, came before I became an atheist. And there was a span of about 10 years between those two epiphanies. And so when I quit going to church, one of the things that let me walk away with my conscience in order, where I wasn't, you know, tortured by doubts about hell, was the idea that I did believe in God, and I did believe that if God wanted me to come to some understanding, and I worked hard and I sincerely tried to find that message or that understanding, that any God worth its salt would extend a hand and meet me halfway. So if I'm trying hard and I want to know, God, if you have something you want me to do, or you've got something you want me to understand, or you've got something you want to tell me, I'm willing to hear it. I'm willing to follow any route that you show me. I'll do whatever it takes to try and get to you. And all I'm asking is that you acknowledge that and appreciate it and show some reciprocation. And I felt like, to me, if there was a God that couldn't do that much, then it wasn't really a God that I cared about or wanted anything to do with. So if you had a God that couldn't appreciate that, someone actually trying, then that God to me was like not worth worshiping.
How arrogant of you. You know, I mean, who do you think you are? You know, you don't place expectations on God. I'm being one of your callers. Right?
Well, what I'm saying, though, is that if God expects me to make the effort, but he will not help me when he sees that I struggle and I need help, then that's a completely unfair scenario where I'm doing everything I can and there's a gap yet because I can't do any more. And so if that God really wants me to take that step, and then that hand needs to be extended, and if it's not extended, I've done everything I can. And that's the point. It's like I've done everything I can. And so when I get to, you know, the heavenly gates and I'm called out on what I did or didn't do, my response is I did everything I could think of to do to try and figure out what it is you wanted. And I was unable to achieve it. And if I have to suffer for that, then I have to suffer for it, because all I can do is as much as I can do. You can only give your best effort.
Now, the goalposts continue to move here, though, because they can just say, well, your heart was hard, you weren't listening with the right ears, you didn't have the benefit of the Holy Spirit. God was speaking the entire time. If only you had really, truly, honestly been listening, Tracie, you would have heard his voice.
A human being can only give their best effort. I mean, that's it. You can only do as much as you can do, and you can only search as hard as you can search, and you can only be as open as you can be. And so what the reality is that if I'm doing everything I can think of to do, and there are things I'm not thinking of, then I need a hand. And if that God wants me to get there, then that God will give me the hand. If he doesn't want me to get there, then I won't get the hand and I won't get there. Or I'll have to wait longer to get there, or whatever the deal is. But the point is, I knew that all I could do when confronted with God was to say, I did the best I could. And if I felt like that was true, then there's nothing more that I could have done. And so at that point, if a God is going to make me suffer, then the God is messed up. Yeah. And if I'm going to, but if the God is not a complete jerk, then that God is going to be okay with my best effort.
I like the way Dillahunty said it when he said someone had asked him, what would it take for you to be convinced that there is God, or that God is real? And I think he said something along the lines of, I'm not really sure what it would take, but if God exists, he knows what it would take.
Right.
And he knows what I would need to be convinced. And he could already be working to that end or have done so. I thought, well, that's actually a really good answer, right? If God knows me all that well, he knows what it takes to convince me, right?
Right. Yeah, and Matt will often tell people, like, you should pray to your God to find out what it is going to convince me and then use it.
Tracy, is anybody right now praying for your immortal soul? I mean, on the family tree, are they terrified? Are they mortified that Tracy's doing an atheist show in Austin, Texas, or what?
Not at all. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, the church that we went to was, I don't know, my dad was very weirdly, like, argumentative. Like, he would argue the Bible, and he would be very into confronting things in a real aggressive way. But he never went to church. Like, there'd be these weird points in his life where he would sort of get invigorated and go back for like 6 months, and then he would quit going because he would never agree with them about anything. But he never agreed with anybody about anything. I mean, the man was just like a continual argument. And so you had him, and then he really, all he did was argue with me. I mean, he wouldn't, I didn't really matter what I said. I mean, the guy was going to argue with me about whatever. And so my mother, she was kind of this weirdly superstitious Italian Catholic woman, and she deconverted before I can remember, probably before I was born, to this weird Church of Christ, like fundamentalism. And in that situation, she just, I don't know, she had all this weird fear. And there was also this weird thing with her where she just felt really stupid. Like, a lot of times she would say, I'm just not that smart, or she kind of had this weird give up, like, I don't know, and so whatever they tell me. But then at the same time, there were certain things that she kind of felt strongly about that she would just be like, they say that's wrong, but I don't think that's wrong. And it would be like, okay,
like
whatever.
Like a cafeteria kind of a religion, right? I mean,
I just think that, when you're not raised in it, sometimes it's hard for them to sell the whole thing. Like, they try to sell the whole pitch, and it's like, but you're okay with something and you don't understand why it's wrong, and they're telling you it's wrong, and you're going, yeah, I don't know, I grew up with that, it wasn't a problem. So it's really hard to change somebody's opinion when they've already experienced something and they don't think there's a problem with it, or if they really like something and they don't think there's a problem with it, to try to convince them that it's wrong is very difficult. So,
but, I mean, if they see you on television, are they proud? Are they?
Oh, weird? Both my parents died. Like,
oh, Jesus Christ.
Tracy,
I did not know that. I'm so sorry.
Why?
I mean, I
got old
didn't mean to
died.
trod upon the grave of your parents.
No, believe me. I mean, there are some people who their biggest contribution to make the world a better place is their death. I mean, that's just a hard reality, and I think in some ways my dad improved the world the day he died. I'm
not sure how to unpack that, Tracy.
You don't have to be sorry that my parents died.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not, and I had relations with them like all the way until they died. If I hadn't called and reached out to them, I'd have probably never heard from them. I mean, they were very, very uninterested in my life. Not in a, they didn't dislike me or anything like that, but
they weren't vindictive. They were just disconnected.
Yeah, they were just doing whatever they did, and as far as they were concerned, I could go do whatever I did. I don't even think they knew what I was involved in.
I hope no one ever says about me, the day he died, the world became a better place. I mean, that's kind of harsh, Tracy. I mean,
you're talking about a guy who got, basically kicked out of Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's, and I mean, the guy was just, he could not get along with people and was racist and homophobic, and I mean, just not a nice person. I mean, I feel bad because I understand his upbringing, and I understand like a lot of what made him the way he was, and I think for a lot of years I kind of wished that he would have some kind of life change and become a happy person, but he never became a happy person. He was an angry man. He could be a violent man. And I just don't see a reason to pretend that it was a big loss, because it wasn't. It's like I didn't hate him, and we had a relationship. I could pick up a phone and talk to him, and I did. And I would call and wish him happy birthday, call him on mom and dad on holidays, and I did my thing. So there was not like, we weren't estranged, and we didn't have a strain on our relationship, but I'm not going to, if they weren't my parents, they were not people I would probably want to be close to in my life.
What's that saying? You can pick your friends, but you're stuck with your relatives, right?
Yeah. And I, like I say, I'm not gonna. There were worse people on the planet than them, but they weren't necessarily nice.
It's just when you throw a zinger like that out, I have to stop and just say, "Whoa, where does that come from?"
Well, a lot of the things I post on Facebook have to do with supporting people who have unfriendly families, right? And so a lot of times other people try to guilt them and tell them like, oh, you have to have a relationship, or you have to love them, that's your mother, or you have to love them, that's your dad, or that's so sad that you don't have this relationship. But sometimes it's the best thing someone can do to cut off those relationships, and sometimes it's the healthiest for them to not necessarily go on the rest of their life wishing that these people loved them who should love them but don't. So I don't like to see people torture themselves over something like that, and I like to tell them, I like to be that voice that tells them, if you don't love your parents and they weren't good people to you, it's okay. Yeah. You don't have to love them any more than you have to love a stranger on the street if they were not good parents to you.
That's a foreign language in my culture. My father's one of those guys, Tracie, where if he does the Ancestry.com stuff, and if you have the last name and you live in a remote part of the United States, he'll drive into your state and knock on your door. And,
I'm not saying that if you have good family relations.
No. My point is that the criteria to be in the in-group is not that you're a good person; it's that you are just already a part of the tribe. And I've always sort of held in my own life to. Yeah, I really do want to be a part of a family, and I think those bonds are important. But I would take a good friend over a distant relative or an unpleasant relative any day.
There are
share a last name or a family tree is no guarantee that you're a good person or that we have anything in common or that you. And boundaries also come into play, right? Families quite often cross boundaries in the name of love when they're acting in anything but a loving way, and it makes me crazy.
Yeah, my family was very, very independent. Like all of the members just sort of did their own thing. So we were never super close, but not in a bad way. Like I don't want to make anybody think like that. But I mean, none of us really keep in touch. We have that option. We're all available to each other, but we just don't. We're not close. And that is just the kind of how I was raised. If I'm missing something, then I don't know it. So I guess I'm okay with it. But I don't have a problem if people have close family ties. And I don't have a problem if somebody chooses to keep toxic people in their life because they value those bonds. That, to me, is their decision. And I feel like whatever decision a person makes when it comes to including or excluding their family to maintain their own sanity needs to be supported. And I just feel like people should not be guilted or somehow judged when they cut off a family member, or they say, hey, my brother or my sister or my aunts, uncles, grandmother, whatever, was a horrible person. There are horrible people in the world, and sometimes you're related to them. And when that happens, you shouldn't feel like it's awful to say, this was not a nice person. Right? I mean, Hitler had relatives. So you have the right, I think, to judge your family just like you would to judge, people that you see on the street that are awful. And if that awful person married into your family, that doesn't make them better, and it doesn't make them someone that you suddenly have to love. I mean, that's just messed up. And it's more a reaction where I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just saying that whatever they choose to do, people should not try to make them feel bad, and say things. Well, and please don't get me wrong. I'm not pooping on you telling me that you were sorry my parents had died, but there are people who will often be like, oh, that's so sad that you don't have a relationship with your mom, or you don't have a relationship with your dad. And it's not sad. If you knew their mom or dad, you'd be like, oh, that's so great that you're able to.
I was thinking out of ignorance. I was thinking, did she have a strong bond? Is she grieving? Did it happen yesterday? Oh my God.
It's cool. they were old. They lived their lives.
All right.
They went, did what they did, and
well,
then
you and I
died.
are on the same page. Playing the family card does not give you a license to cross boundaries, to inject negativity,
Yeah, not
to
at
be
all.
a toxic person. And quite often families play that card, right? We didn't bring you into this world so you could embarrass us or you could treat us like this. I mean, I've been told you're an embarrassment to the family, right? Well, how much of that do you put up with, or does family become the family you choose,
I think that, it depends on the people. Sometimes you have to like train people almost like you would train any other animal, right? So there are times when I'll hear people say like, oh, this or that person, my in-laws maybe, we hear that a lot. My in-laws always want to talk about religion when I come over, and I don't want to have that discussion with them. And sometimes I've tried a few times to talk to them, and it always ends up in a fight. It's just ugly, negative, don't want to go there. And so I will tell them, like, you're going to have to train these people, right? So you go over to the house, and they start to bring up this issue, and you just immediately say, this is really not something I'm comfortable talking about, so can we just maybe choose another topic and talk about something else? Because a lot of times when we talk about this, it's turned into like an argument, and I would really like to enjoy the visit instead of having an argument. And if it comes back to that, like if it keeps coming back, you just keep saying the same thing. It's just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. I really don't want to talk about this. I was hoping that we could come here and have a nice visit. That's not an issue where we agree. And I understand you have your opinions on that. We've tried to talk about it. It hasn't gone well. So can we just have a nice visit? I said about the third time you have to say that in an evening, that's the time you kind of say, yeah, I think it's getting late. We have to go. And you just have this experience over and over, and that experience will ultimately end the conversation. They will stop bringing it up when they realize that you're not going to engage it. It might take a few times. You have to be very consistent with it, but you have to just basically train them that this is a conversation you are not going to have. They can have it if they want, but you're not going to engage it. And so you can train a person like that, and sometimes you can just be direct. I think a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking that being direct is being rude, and you can be direct and rude, don't get me wrong, but I think just expressing a boundary isn't really that bad. And I'll just give a real quick example that's been something that I actually had talked to someone recently, right? They had a friend of theirs that has started, that moved into town and is doing this thing where they just pop in, right? So it's like they come over, they pop in, they don't call before they come by. And my friend is just like, I don't like that because they don't know what I'm doing or not doing. Like, I could have company over, and they're like literally coming by and walking in the house, right? So it's like not even a knock, knock, knock. It's like, just come on in. And I'm like, wow, that's, so they've tried all these weird little things, these indirect things to stop it. And one of the things was they own a handgun in the house, and they said, please don't, they said, please don't come in like that, because I hear someone in the house, and I could come out with and have a gun in your face, and I don't want to do that. Now, they don't really believe that's what would happen, but that was the excuse they gave. But what I said was, how insane to me that you would rather put a gun in someone's face to kind of scare them away from doing something you don't like, instead of simply saying to them directly, I notice that you come over sometimes and I don't know you're coming over, and you just walk into my house, and I would really prefer if you would call before you come over. In fact, it makes me very uncomfortable when you come over and you don't let me know that you're coming by. And so please don't do this anymore. And please make sure that you contact me before you come over, and that I respond and say that it's okay to come by before you do this, because I'm not comfortable with it. How is that hard?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how is that hard?
I think we live in a culture where people are so busy trying not to offend.
Right, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, where is the offense there?
Yeah.
Please don't do this. It makes me uncomfortable.
It's boundaries.
That should never be offensive.
The word continues to come up. It's just people feeling like they're entitled to cross over this membrane, this line. And I think it's more than fine for you to decide where that line is.
Yeah, and you can draw that line just based on your personal comfort. You don't even have to understand why. If something makes you uncomfortable and someone else is doing it, and they're doing it to you, and they don't need to do it for themselves, then you have every right to say, look, you're involving me in this. I'm not comfortable with it, so don't do this with me. You absolutely can say that. And if they ask you, what's the problem with it, you can just absolutely say, makes me uncomfortable.
Tracie, I've dominated the first portion of the show. If you're cool, I'd like to go to the sort of switchboard here on Google Hangout and see what our viewers and callers have to throw out.
Okay.
I'm sure this is something that you're
Sure.
used to.
Okay.
I've got Joel in the chat room. Joel, thanks for calling the radio show or the video show. Thanks for watching. What do you have for Tracie Harris today?
I have a question for both. What is your opinion of people who use, either the Satanic Temple or pasta-fighting church to, basically troll the Christian privilege that they get from the government?
I didn't
Tracie Harris?
understand. Wait, people who do what?
People who use the Satanic Church, the Baphomet Monument, and they use the Pastafarian thing with the spaghetti strainer to draw a circle around church-state separation.
No, I'm a big fan. I think the Satanic Temple does a really good service, and it's like it's fun, it's positive. They keep it very positive, and I think they're making a very important statement and the way that they're doing it is creative. I actually like them.
Recently in Oklahoma, that we had the Satanic Church. It was going to do a monument on the Capitol steps, and they had a bunch of Christians, cowboys on horseback, and they rode their horses like 100 miles to deliver a copy of the Ten Commandments to Governor Mary Fallon on the Capitol steps, and she comes out to receive it, and it was this surreal Wild West, Christianity that was taking place. It was bizarre. And, you guys in Texas, you guys are going through this stuff all the time.
Well, I saw a really great little ad. I don't think it's anything new, but it was the first time I'd seen it. I think it was the copyright on the website was like 2014, so this may not be, news, but it was news to me. The Satanic Temple, I guess, has I want to say a hotline, or you can connect with them to sort of join, and then they say it's against their religion, like corporal punishment is against their religion. So the kids that live in school districts where corporal punishment is still allowed can join and say this is against their religion. And so they were encouraging the kids to do that, and I wrote up, onto the thread where I saw that. I shared it, and I was like, this is awesome. And I said, one of the things that I love is their outreach to young people, especially minors, and this has just got to drive the parents mad, right? Like when their kids have access to this. But it's good, and I saw this one when I went and talked in St. Louis. There was a convention there, and the Satanic Temple was there tabling, right? So they were one of the vendors. And they had like all these children's things, like coloring books and activity books. I mean, it was just really, really great. And you couldn't not look at it. It was just so cute. And I love the fact that they outreach in such a family positive way with, kids in mind. And there's just, you've got to love the comedic irony of latching on to, not just a religion, but like grabbing hold of the Satan aspect of the Christian religion, which is just probably the best symbol they could have chosen to go and say, like, we're going to go out and we're going to be happy, positive people that promote family and, taking care of children and, like, just doing all these really positive, good social things, and promoting all these positive messages in a way that you can't really get down on them because the message is so positive, and yet they use that symbol of Satan, which is just associated with pure evil in the Christian church. I did
like a short profile of Anton LaVey, an atheist, and he liked using Satan because he knew how freaked out the faithful got about Satan, and the more they freaked out, the more he sort of reveled in the fact that they just live in fear. They're just terrified all the time.
There is art is all about symbolism, right? And when you choose the proper symbols, you get the most bang for your buck as far as social response. And to me, choosing the symbol of Satan in order to promote what they're promoting and to do what they're doing, it was just, I don't know that they could have picked a better symbol.
Here in my experience in Puerto Rico, where I live right now, is that some people are using Pastafarism as a stepping stone from their Christianity.
Like, are they practicing in a sincere way? They are.
Maybe just using the symbolism and the soften the blow of getting out of a heavy Christianity into a
Oh, I
soft
get it. So they get a chance to practice religious ritual, and they get to wink at it at the same time while holding on to some of the structure that religion provided.
right, and especially on millennials who are under their family protection, but at the same time they have to show some kind of religiosity, and they just use whatever they can to uh, step away from either Catholicism or baptism. So it's just, again, they're using it as a stepping stone, and eventually they'll all come out as atheists, but it helps them soften the blow.
Joel, thanks for the call, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
try. I've got Zach on the switchboard. Zach, can you hear me?
Hello.
Do you have
Hello,
a question
Zach.
or comment for Tracie Harris today?
Quick question. Does Tracie have an online presence where we can actually sort of get sort of regular sort of updates on what she's doing in the atheist community?
I don't, but I don't really do things, so it's like I don't do much. If I were going to, for example, do some speaking, which obviously I'm saying that, but then I didn't do anything about this, there is the Atheist Experience blog where the hosts are welcome to go and post information like that. But I mean, I have like a personal Facebook page where I will announce stuff, but unfortunately I can't make it public, and people will say that sometimes. They'll be like, why don't you make your Facebook page public? But the problem is that I specifically set it up, it's personal, but it's a personal atheist community. So it's like all these online atheists that have come in that have sort of been vetted as friends online. And when they do get on the page, a lot of times they have to vent issues that that they have with their families or jobs or things like that, where maybe they're not out to anyone or everyone. And so for me on Facebook, my page is mainly using, it's like atheists who are kind of at an advanced, what I consider to be an advanced level. We're not having the discussions that you would normally have when you first become an atheist. That's not what the page is for. But when there's people on there that aren't out, I can't make my posts public. I don't have like a public page anywhere, but it's only because there wouldn't be much to post there, other than when I'm doing a show or something. And the schedule for the show, I should say, is at the Atheist Experience website, and they do keep a schedule there of when the different hosts will be presenting.
That answer your question, Zach?
Sorry.
Well, it does, but yeah, it's a shame because every time I see and hear Tracie sort of speaking about atheism, it's always insightful, it's always sort of honest, and it's always friendly.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I wanted to know if it was like an online sort of thing that you've got. But
It's always friendly. It's always friendly until she tells you to get out. Then it's not friendly anymore.
I do have some talks, like recorded talks, that are online if you want to see them, where I did, give little, I guess, some talks last year, but that's about it.
Okay, I've got Bart on the switchboard. Bart has been having some audio issues, and so he held up a notice that said that he had his audio issue fixed. Very creative.
Aww.
What's your comment or question for Tracie Harris? What do you have for us?
Basically, I heard, I didn't know that you were an artist, so I'm actually learning to be an artist at the moment. I'm learning to draw, and it was interesting that you only briefly touched on it. So how do you express yourself creatively now that you're not an artist anymore?
Oh, I don't know if I do express myself creatively. I mean, I'm hesitant to say anything about it because it's kind of a wonky thing, but I wrote a book, and it's like a fictional book about like some people in relationships, and it's nothing it's not published. It's in edits right now, but I'm not really promoting it as something because I kind of did it for myself and not really as a public thing. That would probably be the one thing I've done like in a long time that was an outlet for me to say I have some ideas that I feel like I need to get out in some way, because I was just very frustrated with I'm frustrated with religious models of relationships dominating the relationship framework in the West. I don't like the way that they have set up this normality of like you know, man, woman together for life, and you have to be happy with that or there's something wrong with you. I think that that's a really messed up thing to try to get people to do. And when you look at, you know, speakers like Daryl Ray, who have put a lot of time into studying human beings and sexuality and relationships, you begin to see that people are far more flexible and dynamic than this model that basically says one size must fit all. I understand, like, from a legislative standpoint, why you would want to have a specific model that might be a standard if you're going to endow some sort of familial benefits to people based on this from a legal standpoint. It's certainly a good, efficient way of saying you can just adopt this partner and we'll legally consider it like almost like an adoption where you two are, you know, next of kin and they get all the benefits and we'll just package it up and it's very neat and clean. And if you want to break it up, we can make that neat and clean too because it's the only model. And I'm not talking about, you know, necessarily asking the law to legitimize every form of relationship that a person can dream of, because that would be a crazy family court situation. But I do think that when it comes to just socially accepting relationships, we need to be far more flexible and less judgmental and more open. And there's just so many people that I think have this attitude that if a person is sexually empowered, if they go out and they have multiple partners, if they, you know, that somehow this is bad. And, you know, there's a attitude in some ways where people are like, well, women get punished for this, but men get praised for it. But in honesty, men get hammered for it too. You know, there are a lot of people who just think, oh, he's a dog, you know, he just sleeps with anything. And we have this weird sort of perspective, even sometimes in very enlightened secular people, that there is this sort of shame on you for being so open about your sexuality or being so flexible with your relationships. And I look at that like, you know, so what do you think a person can't be a good person and love lots of people, or maybe not love lots of people but enjoy sexual experiences with lots of, like, this makes someone what, evil or bad or, you know, awful. And I don't like seeing that kind of judgment. And I think that there needs to be more of an expression of not only acceptance of the idea of differences. I think in a lot of ways what we have now, you know, people get hammered, for example, for cheating in a relationship or cheating in a marriage, but we have a society that looks down on an open relationship, right? So you have almost, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that the oppression is equivalent, but it was a similar situation that the gay community had to deal with years ago, where if you wanted to get married, if you wanted to have kids, you had to basically go into this model that was a heterosexual union, trying to stay together. There were a lot of gay people. I had a lot of gay friends that when we grew up and we found out, oh, they're gay, we didn't know they were gay because they had gotten married, they had had these families, they had done all these things trying to fit into the socially acceptable norm of heterosexual reality that didn't accept them and wasn't open to what they needed. And so they just did what was available. And I think a lot of people do that now, even in the heterosexual community, where we're considered to be like the norm and we have that privilege. But at the same time, we still are locked into this idea that you have this relationship model that you have to enter into if you want to be loved, or if you want to have a family, or then this is what you have to do. Obviously, some areas of the country are going to be more flexible than others, but as long as we have that sort of social condemnation and expectation around what's required in a relationship, which I think is mainly because of religion, I think that we have to start looking at the idea of people cheating in a relationship in a similar way to saying that, you know, Jim was married for 20 years and had 3 kids and then came out gay. There's a lot of people who are going to look at that and say, hey, I'm sympathetic because we didn't really give Jim an opening to be gay and to be in a gay relationship and to express himself sexually and in an emotional way with a partner. And we only gave him this limited sort of choice that really didn't fit him. And so he tried for 20 years to fit into that model. It didn't work, and ultimately he had to be himself. And so we would tend to probably not hammer somebody that hard if that were a situation that occurred. But when someone cheats, we don't look at it and say, well, maybe this person is polyamorous and they are not in a situation or in a town where they can express themselves that way and be accepted. And so they went into the only relationship model they could, and they were not able to maintain it because this is not conducive to who they are as a human being and how they express themselves sexually and emotionally within a relationship.
Now, this is stuff you write about in the book, or?
Yes. Basically, it's the story of a guy who has these attitudes, and he's a decent guy. And he gets in a situation with a woman who is got this very, very monogamous mindset, and they have like just a brief encounter, and then later they end up being thrown together in a situation where they have to spend more time together, and she gets very attached, and he just doesn't attach that way. He's not a bad guy. He just does not get attached like that.
Bart, does that answer your question, or address?
It does. I've just got one more thing to say. Your voice, Seth. I've learned a valuable lesson when I first started listening to your show, is never put chocolate near the speaker because
Just
your
stop.
voice tends to melt it.
Just stop. I blush easily. You're very kind.
Seth is like, oh, how you get it?
Whatever. What do I do with that? What do I do with that? But thank you. Very kind. Hey, Brian, do I have audio for you? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to put your face up, and real fast, Renee, I will get to your question. Brian said, chat question, how do we do a better job of improving our networks to build community? We're really good at coming together to battle religious issues, but not so great at having resources for people in need, people in our tribe. I think we need to change the focus a little more on supporting our people like churches do. What are your thoughts, Tracie Harris?
I agree. I agree, and unfortunately, this is one of those areas where I'm like not the person to lead that effort. I'm the person who just don't really need social contact that much, and so but I'm also not the person who says, therefore, I don't understand why anybody else would need it. I look at it like there's people with different needs. I have a friend, I'm going to just plug him here, Joe Mercado, who's with the Piedmont Humanist Association. They do a lot with trying to build a foundation for social networking. They try to partner with family-friendly groups and do all kinds of socially redeeming efforts. And so they're constantly looking for ways to network and to provide that kind of social context where people feel supported in that way. I think it's fantastic the way they're doing it, and I have talked about them once before where I suggested that other groups might look to them as a model of how they're doing it. I would say that people who are good at social coordination should step up and look at that as a need and maybe volunteer in that capacity. If you're with an atheist group that will, and you're not part of it or involved, and you feel like that's where you maybe have a strong suit, step up and just say, I would like to volunteer to start a kind of subcommittee or even do it myself to start planning projects that we can do as a group to offer the members. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I would support it fully.
I've got Renee on the switchboard. Renee, thanks for being a part of the broadcast. Do you have a question or comment for Tracie Harris today?
Well, mainly I have a comment. I just wanted to tell her how much I really appreciate her sharing her voice and views to the community. It serves as a great role model for me. And your pragmatic and practical ways of talking about relationships and family have altered how I communicate with my husband and my kids. And
Wow.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, well, you're totally welcome. If I, did or said anything that was useful for somebody, I'm glad. I mean, that's always a good thing in life, to know that you had a positive input into something about someone else.
That's got to feel good, right? I mean, Renee, we activists sometimes are in the business where we're sending something out into a feed that goes out into the ether, but we don't always get the chance to hear the voices and see the faces and connect.
I would actually like to applaud Renee in her phrasing of the idea of thanking me for sharing my views and my voice. There are a lot of people who will say things like, thank you for representing the community, and I don't like to think that I do. I like to think that I represent myself, and like you're saying, if someone benefits from that, that's great. But I don't want people to feel like I'm representing them or that I'm trying to represent them. I really, really promote that people need to make their own voices heard, that people are responsible for expressing their own views, as much as they can. And I will do my best to make inroads to allow those voices to be heard in areas where they can't currently be heard. So I understand that there are some situations where people cannot express their views, and it's not an easy thing to do, or it might even be impossible. But I do feel like the goal should be to create a situation where one day they can open their mouth and represent themselves. And so for me, the whole thing is about making sure that all these voices get heard, not making sure that my voice represents everybody else or that I'm even trying to, because there are too many voices for somebody to represent. And so I really appreciate the fact that you identified my presentation of myself as being for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Renee, you just made our day. Or you made Tracie.
Well, both of you have made my day. So.
Well, thanks for being a part of the show. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Tracie, thanks for everything you're doing in Austin, Texas, and via the internet around the world. Thanks for sort of, I think you've got a real gift at this, and I think many people would agree with me that you do, and I'm glad that you've decided to throw your hat in the ring and be a part of the conversation. I think we're all doing what we can, where we can, however we can, and for doing what you do, thanks. It really is making a difference out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think things need to be done, and people need to do them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to like it, but if it needs doing and no one else is doing it, and not to, I feel weird about this, but it parallels kind of what the book thing. One of the comments that the editor made to me. Or another editor, I'm sorry, not the editor that's mainly working, but there was another person that read it that is not officially working in the capacity of editorial, but is an editor, and one of his very first comments to me was, "You're a very crappy writer." And I said, "I know this." I said, "I know this." But I said, the problem that I have is that when I went online to find this idea expressed somewhere in a form like this, I couldn't find it. I said, if there were a better writer willing to step up and write this story, I would prefer that. But since a better writer's not doing it, I think it needs to be done, and so I did it.
Well, we'll keep our eyes. Do we have a date for release for this sucker?
I actually don't, and like I said, it was kind of just for me, and there was a part of me that I've already talked to the editor, and I was just like, I don't want to release this under my name. I want to release it under like another name, because what I don't want is people who are like, I really like Tracie Harris, therefore I will buy the book. And it's like, I don't want that. I want, if the book is crap and nobody likes it, then it should sit and never sell a copy. It should never sell just because it has my name on it.
Okay. Well, we'll keep our eye open for something with someone's name on it, which releases at some point, at some time, somewhere. Okay. Oh, that work?
And I might do. I mean, they might convince me otherwise. They were just like, no, you should.
I'll make sure,
and
like, I'll link to the Atheist Experience in the description box of this show. We'll keep our eyes and ears open for what you're about and doing in the future. And all my best. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Thank you.